Every time I start getting weepy, I remember Van Hogen pantsing me in the cafeteria. Yeah, and then I remember high school sucked.
Are you really gonna do it? I would've been mad if you did. If you hadn't put that video up, I could have been the one finding you all dead.
Mr. Carter, I love you.
I'm unbalanced? Yes! You're the one who passed up her door, and you possess! Van! You know what a monster he is? I'm not sorry for haunting him. Maybe if he dies, I will shred him.
Taking your advice. I've gone back to school.
Back where I will be what I was meant to be. Bad.
All right, hey everyone. We are back on WTBU John Hughes Ate My shorts with a very special guest here. But first, let's recap a few songs. We just played "Take on Me" by Aha, "Separate Ways, Worlds Apart" by Journey, and "Never Tear Us Apart" by Inxus. So now we're gonna go into our little interview. We're very happy to have Robert on the air with us. Robert, are you there?
Yes.
All right. Thanks for calling in today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
All right. So we just we're all kind of, well, my roommate here and I are friends, really big fans of Being Human. So it was really cool to get to see you on the show in the last 2 seasons. What was that experience like for you?
Well, first of all, it was cool that it was all filmed in my hometown, Montreal. So that kind of makes everything a bit more homey, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just cool when you get those somewhat bigger American-style productions that come here.
Right.
Because you get a really good blend, I find, of local people working with American people, and I always find that really cool. So Being Human had a lot of that, and honestly, I find that was one of the coolest things, you know, working with people like Sam Whitworth, Sam Huntington, you know, and then Megan Rath, who comes from Montreal. So you kind of have that blend of people, and I thought that was really cool. And it's a really fun set to be on. Like, the 2 Sams who play the vampire and the werewolf are ridiculously funny. And really completely goof around on set all the time. So it was a lot of fun, and it was some cool experiences.
So how do you watch the show before you auditioned for it, or were you a fan or anything?
I had never watched the show, but when I landed the part, I just out of interest watched the whole first season. I actually really liked it. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would because, you know, when you hear the premise of the show, you hear vampire, werewolf, ghost, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
That seems to have been done 100 times before, but I found the way it was done was actually quite cool, and I actually really liked it when I first watched it.
Right, it has a lot of real storylines to it, a lot of, like, emotions.
Yeah, like, cause, I mean, the trend, like, the last, like, 5 or 7 years, which I'm pretty sure was probably sparked by Twilight, has really been, you know, like, vampire, werewolf, themed stuff, so I find, like, when you hear about that, like, you just kind of hear, oh, it's a show about vampires and werewolves, and you're kind of like, But when I try to explain to people, who are like, oh, what's Being Human? I'm like, I so don't want to say, oh, it's a show about vampires and werewolves, because to me, it's not, well, you know, one of those typical vampire werewolf shows. There's a lot of real, as you said, like, real emotion in it.
Right. Do you still watch it now?
Yeah, I do.
That's cool. So, yeah, the set, like, the crew has a lot of chemistry, it seems, like, in the interviews I've seen with them. So, that was kind of, like, fun on set, I'm guessing.
Yeah, really, I mean, like, it makes everything so much easier to do, like, when you're actually having, like, a lot of fun with the people, like, in between takes. It just kind of makes everything smooth over a lot quicker. Like, I know, like, literally between every take, Megan, who plays Sally, and Sam, who plays Josh, will be finding something ridiculous to do or attempt at, like, any possible moment. Like, they'll just try and squeeze in as much, like, laughter as possible into that little time frame we have, and it just kind of makes everything a lot lighter and more fun.
Yeah, I think we can really tell that from their Twitter accounts and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the photos and stuff.
And you worked with Megan before, right? I saw her on Cyberbully.
Yeah. I met her on Cyberbully because we didn't actually do any, like, we weren't in any scenes together, but I think I met her before during like the beginning of Cyberbully. So you know, when I first met her on Being Human, I was like, oh hey, I remember you from so and so place. But I mean, there wasn't really like much of like a relationship built up at all until Being Human.
All right. And I've heard things too about being that character, being a ghost. I've heard that like there's certain things that you have to be wary of when you're playing that part. I heard that Megan Rath had like wooden cushions, and if even like someone touched her, they had to reshoot the whole thing. Was that difficult for you?
Well, I remember Megan kind of talked to me about it, and like, it's funny because when I walked into like the house, like their house, I just kind of sat down on the sofa and I was like, this seems a lot harder than it should be, because ghosts aren't supposed to make any like contact with that world. So you know, when they sit on a couch, you're not supposed to see it like kind of like cave in a little bit. Like it has to be that they're not actually sitting there. But I mean, it wasn't really that big a deal because I mean my character didn't seem to encounter that much, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But they did mention it, saying, you know, like, keep in mind that you're a ghost, so you can't just start like kicking chairs and tables and stuff.
How did it feel filming the scene where you had, you know, your head in a noose and everything?
That was actually an interesting one because well, they have like they have like this big harness like around you, and then basically they tie the noose around your neck, but like it's not actually tied up to the tree.
Yeah.
So what's actually tied up to the tree is the rope from the harness. So you're just you're hanging from the harness, and then you have the noose around your neck. Except for it to look real, they have to somewhat tighten the noose, or else it would just look like it was a noose just kind of laying there. So it did kind of get a little bit painful in the sense where I was hanging from a harness for like 4 hours, and they would only kind of like let me down like intermittently, and then like when they had to kind of tighten the noose around my neck, I mean, yeah, it wasn't tied up to anything, but it was still kind of tight and really kind of, you know, like cut off a lot of air. But they were really, really good about like
not killing
making
you,
sure that I wasn't like dying.
That's good to know. Not dying is always a great thing. So yeah, in the most recent episode that we saw your character in, it kind of looked like it was the end of the line for him. Can you say anything about like if we'll see him again?
To be honest, with this character, it's just kind of like, because he's very good at leaving and coming back and then leaving again and then coming back again. So, I don't know. He might pop up again. I'm not saying he will, but he might.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, we're kind of talking about this. So you're 16 years old, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So what's it like being both a student and an actor? How do you kind of juggle both?
I kind of got used to it, just like because you kind of have to like take this approach where, well, first of all, you kind of notify all your teachers before, like beforehand, and be like, I might be leaving quite randomly for long periods of time, and then teachers will be like, well, could you inform us in advance when you're leaving? And I'm like, well, I don't know, like something could come up, and then I have to leave for 3 weeks. And I only know like 2 days beforehand, so it's kind of hard to notify in advance. So that kind of gets tricky. And then there's the whole idea of catching up on the work, but it works well. And now I'm in my last year of high school because in Canada we have one less year of high school than you guys. So so I'm finishing up, and now it's been easy. I've kind of gotten used to it, and you just kind of get into the groove of it, and it just becomes like second nature to go talk to the teachers, get stuff beforehand, catch up and stuff. It's doable.
Is it ever weird, like, going into school and, like, having your classmates just seeing you on TV the night before?
At first it was. I remember, like, in the early, like, a few years ago, like, it would just feel weird, because sometimes, like, if in a given week, I would work Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then I would slip into school Wednesday, Thursday, so it'd just be, like, it was just, like, odd in that sense, where, like, you would be, like, working on a set and then go to bed and then wake up the next day and go sit in a class for 2 days and go back on set. Like, it was kind of odd. Like, for me, like, I felt just kind of weird jumping between those, like, completely two different, like, lives, I guess. But I don't know. At first, like, the classmates were kind of like, oh, but it faded pretty quickly, and it was just kind of like, oh, you were on TV again. Yes. But no, it's cool. And, you know, you hear a lot of stories about, you know, younger actors who might get some sort, you know, like, might get bad treatment from classmates because of them being actors, but I've never at all really felt that, which is good.
Right, and even though you're a young actor, you've had like quite a variety of roles, and a lot of them too, like, they're kind of bold roles. You know,
that's actually a really good way to put it. I've never heard it put that way. It's a good way.
Yeah, we were looking at some of your stuff, the IFC show, Bullet in the Face. That's quite a role.
Shocking.
Yeah, that one was interesting because it was like, I never thought that at my age I'd be playing like that kind of role, because that's a very specific. Did you guys watch the? Did you guys watch the episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I never would have thought that I would be in the position to be playing that kind of role, because like, in what show is that role gonna show up except a show called Bullet in the Face? So it was cool. It was just like, it was completely different. Like, I had never done anything similar to it, which was fun.
And that scene with you on, like, in the interrogation table where he, like, shoves the popcorn down. What was it? I just, like, imagining what it must be like to film a scene like that. It's like, okay, we're gonna throw some popcorn down your throat, and just, like, you know.
Well, basically what they did was they would throw, like, the like, they just kind of, like he would pour unpopped popcorn into my mouth, and then they would cut, like, not cut, but, like, they would pause. I would spit out all the unpopped popcorn, replace it with actual popped popcorn. Then they would resume again, and then I'd pretend that it popped in my mouth. But it was still like you can't fake being grabbed by the neck and poured popcorn down your throat. So, you know, it was interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Was it hard for you initially trying to get into that role, you know? Because it seems like from what you've done, that was by far the most...
It's very dark.
Violent, like, dark role you had. Was it hard getting into character?
At first, you kind of, like, I'd say for the first... For any... Well, this applies to really anything that you're doing. For, like, the first day or two, you're kind of still testing out, like, okay, what is going to define this character? Like, how am I going to, like, what is going to define him? Like, what kind of character is he going to be specifically? And then once you've kind of decided he's going to be, you know, so-and-so way and have this kind of reaction and these mannerisms, you kind of, like, after that process, you kind of just like, get used to it. And it's just kind of, you just kind of do it, and then you stop, and you do it, and you stop. But it's all about, you know, like, I'd say at the beginning is really deciding, okay, what, who's this person going to be? And then from there, you kind of just build off that.
Okay.
Do you have, like, kind of a favorite role that you've played so far in your career?
I actually really like being human. Because a lot of the other stuff I had played were really dark and kind of, like, somber. And being human is, in a way, kind of light. And it was kind of fun to just kind of flicker around and, you know, do that stuff. So, and the set was a lot of fun. So, I'd actually have to go with being human. Being human was a lot of fun.
So you're bilingual too, right? Do you find that your roles in kind of French films and English films are any different? Do you play them any differently?
No, because, I mean, you're going to have the same selection of movies in English and in French, and you're going to have the same, like, you know, like, the movies are not necessarily different in English than they are in French. Like, they're the same, you know, people still do the same movies, just in a different language. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, you'll have, I wouldn't say that it's like a certain language has a certain type of role that I fall into more, or that anyone falls into more, but just in general, I've done a lot of, and not by choice, it's just the way it's happened, I've done a lot of, like, dark roles. But no, yeah, I wouldn't say the language thing really affects the role. I think it just kind of is like however it comes, you know.
Is there any like preference you have though for either language?
They're different because obviously here, where I live, if you do something in French, then you know here in Quebec we have like a really like pretty intense like local TV and cinema circle. Like it's really important to a lot of people who live here. So obviously, if you do something in French, then you're going to get a lot like the local people are going to take a really big interest to you because you know you're a local actor in a French project. Whereas if you do English, it's usually more directed towards the U.S. So you're not going to really get as much attention for it, which is not necessarily bad, but it's just you know it's different. Like the French ones feel more like local, and you hear people talk about it more, which is interesting. Whereas for the U.S., when you do English stuff, you don't really hear much about it as much because it's such a much of a bigger market.
Right. And we were looking at some of your roles that you played, and we saw that you were the voice of DW for several years.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough.
How was that? We all grew up with that, so that was something really interesting for us.
Yeah, well, that's like the I don't know. It's kind of a thing where when you tell people, it's always fun to look at their facial expression to see how they react to because I remember like a couple weeks ago I was talking to someone and then someone brought up the fact that I had played the voice of W in Arthur and like it was just like this expression he had on his face was like, wait, huh? Like he couldn't quite piece it together. So it's fun in hindsight in that sense, but also while doing it, it was just, I don't know, it was easy. Like it's just like cute, bratty, 5-year-old girl voice, you know. And a lot of people would always come up to me and be like, oh, can you do DW's voice? And now I've gotten to a point where my voice is deepened, so I just kind of sound creepy trying to do it. But no, that was a lot of fun, and that's like Arthur is really quite popular. And I knew like a lot of people grew up watching Arthur, and people still do. Like I know a bunch of people who are like 18, 19, 20 who still wake up in the morning and put on Arthur. Like, you know, so I don't know, that was cool, and it was once again all done in Montreal, which is a bonus.
Elise, what was your question?
He actually just answered my question.
Oh.
I was going to ask about asking to do the DW voice, so.
So, would you say that you have kind of a role model or kind of somewhere you're hoping to go with your career? Because, like, up to this point, you've kind of done a variety of different roles. Is there any kind of area you're hoping to concentrate in as you continue?
No. Because I don't know, I feel like there can be interesting stuff to do, like, no matter what genre or theme, you know, like, there could be some really interesting stuff to do in a comedy movie, whereas there could be also something equally as interesting but different in a, you know, like a political drama, I don't know, something like that. So, you know, I actually probably overall just hope to keep it diverse and, you know, just kind of, rather than take a role for its theme, take a role just because it's interesting, you know, and I find that those interesting roles can really show up from any side of the cinematic spectrum, however you want to call it.
Is there any, like, actor or someone that you're just like, wow, I just hope I could be in their position someday?
I find Daniel Day-Lewis really, really good. I just find his, like, I don't know, like because there's a lot of actors who kind of, like, I find push it a bit too much, and then it kind of, like, I don't know, like, you'll be watching them, and you'll be like, okay, this is good, but, like, I feel bad believing it, like, it feels just a bit too pushed, whereas him, I find he always manages to, like, push it, but you're still kind of like, this could be a real person, which I find really, really hard to do, and I respect that.
So when you do take on a new role and you look at the script and you talk to the director, things like that, how do you really picture the person that you're going to be portraying? Is there like a ritual you go through? What's your thinking process, things like that?
No, not particularly. It's just like you kind of have to go through like you have to make sure you kind of get it right, because if you if the person you're supposed to be playing is a, let's say, like, I don't know, like a recovering drug addict, then a recovering drug addict is going to have certain characteristics that someone else would not have, so you have to be aware of that. So I always kind of try to like I don't necessarily go out and like study the thing I'm playing. Like I wouldn't necessarily go study recovering drug addicts,
Yeah.
but I would try and think, okay, what things would this kind of person have that make this kind of person unique? And you want to just kind of build off of that, because you don't want to, like if you have a recovering drug addict who's acting like a, I don't know, like, anyways, but it's hard to illustrate really, but it's just like, just really kind of build someone interesting and just kind of do that by see, it's hard to say. That's why I'm having trouble saying it.
Right.
But it's like because it's different every time, Like there's not really like, okay, I'm going to start off by working on his facial expressions and then work on his, the way he talks, and then you just kind of take it however it comes and just make sure that he feels real. And I think that's the most important part, is make sure that the character you're playing actually feels or actually seems like someone who could actually exist.
I'm interested to know how you fit yourself into the role that you played in Alone with Mr. Carter. Just because that was such a big film, it got people thinking a lot. So how did you did you have that in the back of your mind as you kind of prepared for that?
That one was easier because it was sort of autobiographical, coming from the director's perspective. Like he was kind of like writing a story about when he was young. So I kind of got a lot of that from him, because he was literally kind of like relaying the way he was feeling at that time, talking about him as a kid, and I was really able to kind of like take a lot of it from him. But it was I wouldn't say it was any different. It was mostly just the same old spiel of what would this 12-year-old gay child in love with his 65-year-old neighbor act like.
Okay, kind of wrapping up here so we don't keep you all night. Since we are kind of an 80s genre type show, do you have a favorite 80s song?
God, I could not even name you an 80s band. Like, my musical tastes are really quite different from that, I would say. But, I don't know.
How about a 80s TV show or a movie?
Was Marathon Man from the 80s?
Not
think
sure.
We will have to look that up.
Anyways, I really like that movie, and I know that probably from around the 80s, so I'll go with that. But really, like,
Right.
80s bands, like, I know, like, bands that
1976.
come from 20, 30 years ago, but I couldn't tell you if they specifically came, like, this band that came from the 80s or the 70s or the 90s. Like, my musical tastes are, like, pretty different from that.
Yeah, Marathon Man was 1976. 76.
Yeah, close.
Very, very close.
Almost there. 4 years.
Good enough.
All right. Well, thank
All right.
you so much for being on with us. It was
No problem.
great talking to you.
Thank you.
Have an awesome day at school tomorrow.
Thank you, and have a awesome rest of the show until 2.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for calling, and we'd love to have you on again if you ever want to call in.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much.
All right, later.
All right, see ya. All right, guys. That was Robert Naylor, the star of one of the stars of Being Human, as well as the voice of DW from 2007 to 2011 or 12, I believe.
2012, I think.
2012. This is a star in Alone with Mr. Carter and an episode of Bullet in the Face. So we just had, and Cyberbully.
And
that too.
Immortals and lots of movies.
Several movies. That was our brush with fame here on John Hughes Ate My Shorts. Thanks so much, Robert. So right now we're going to jump right into some music again. As always, thank you for listening to WTBU. But before we go, we are WTBU. We are broadcasting live at 89.3 FM, 640 AM, and at WTBUradio.org. Live on BU Cable Channel 6. We're also on the WTBU iPhone app. You can call in at 617-353-6400 or send an IM to WTBU Radio DJ. So sending you off with some music. Hope you enjoyed our interview. And here we go.